Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri YouTube series. There's an echo in here, isn't there? I didn't consider that. Oh well, it's empty this time of year because of the mid-season. This is Hotel Schatzau, formerly Sanatorium Schatzau. It's where Dmitri spent the last years of his life from September 1939 to March 1942. And so he would have spent a lot of time in this area. It's the Grand Salon. And I thought it would be a fun place to do the program from today because it's a little chilly to be out on the balcony. If the camera was facing the other direction, you could see that it's quite an overcast day. It is, in fact, April 13th, 2026. And our recap from last time, well, today we're finishing up the letter, the undated letter that Dmitri sent to his sister in 1910. He actually doesn't give us many hints of what time of year it was, except the day of the week. It was a Sunday. What we found out from the first half of that letter is that he was back from a recent trip to Stockholm. He was missing Maria quite a bit, but he was getting lots of invitations, lots of social invitations. He was 18 years old, or 19, depending on whether this was before or after September 6th. And as in 1908 letter, he complains about having to say the same thing over and over and over again when people ask him about her. And then he concluded the first half of that letter with this strange statement. There are no love letters yet. So far, no one has sent me any bouquets, and I haven't seen any of my morganatic friends. Okay, so what to do with that? I don't know. I can't tell you. Let's dive in then to the second half and finish this letter off. Let's see. How are you in far-off Sweden? How was your ball? Was your costume a success? Were you in a skirt or pantaloons? Ah, listen, I almost forgot the purpose of my letter. Please proceed with purchasing my blank in the amount of 150 to 200 rubles as we agreed. If possible, ask her thoughts about spending 150 rubles first, and if that turns out to be too little, offer more. Today I jumped, but unsuccessfully. Something is terribly blank with me. I can't take it. God knows what it is. When I returned to Petersburg, i.e. last Sunday, I went to the school to practice and didn't manage to jump 4 times before I fell, together with the horse, over a large obstacle. The horse, blank, fui panache. I fell about 14 feet and landed on my face. Overall, the fall was very picturesque, but not particularly painful. Nothing much is going on in Petersburg. Yesterday, I burst in on Auntie Marie. I spent a fairly long time there. The devil knows where they heard that you are supposedly behaving strangely in Sweden, which finally irritated me so much that I spoke so heatedly about you that she actually got embarrassed and said she herself didn't believe all the rumors. Exclamation point. I went skating twice and skated a lot, even to the point of being overwhelmed. Irina is now there, blank, for the ORG. This is an abbreviation, probably organization. Blank there are all the time. She really skates superbly and does everything as if she were on solid legs. Well, and now I give you a big hug. You're Dmitri. P.S. How is Vilgashka doing? And Lieutenant Rudebeck? Il n'est pas encore mon amant. Okay, that's odd. Don't worry, I know you probably can't understand French the way I pronounce it. So I'll go back to that. So as you can see, there are some disruptive blanks in this letter. It was a little hard to make out here and there. And the worst one is this about Irina. So we'll go back to that. So Maria had given this ball I always think about her as I'm reading these letters as this very, very young woman. She was 18 when she got married. There pretty much by herself in Sweden. Even when she was pregnant and giving birth, she didn't have her mother there with her or anyone like that. And so if she was indeed behaving a little strangely, I think it's understandable, for God's sake. Okay, so she'd had this ball. It may be that she was very much enjoying that part of her life, the fact that she had her own household, and Ella had kept both Dmitri and Maria so much under her thumb. I mean, they had an early bedtime and all this sort of thing that, it was probably quite heady for her. I don't know what it was he wants in Sweden, because that's a place with one of these disruptive, illegible words. He wants her to proceed with purchasing his something that will cost 150 to 200 rubles, to try to get it for 150. The person whom it's being bought from is female. If possible, ask her. No idea what that could be that he wants from Sweden that he couldn't get in Russia. He was careful with money, I think. I get the overall impression that he was involved, even though he hadn't officially come of age yet. He didn't have control of his own finances legally, but at the same time, it's clear that he was included in the decision-making very directly, and was being taught to be careful with money. And the thing that really ruined that was the fact that he ended up, after the revolution, when he couldn't afford it, being a compulsive gambler. Okay. The next thing is, he's practicing to be able to compete in steeplechases. And I'm sure most of you know that he was a participant with the Russian equestrian team in the 1912 Olympics in Stockholm. And, he was learning how to do that. Quite a dangerous sport. And something is off, he seems to say. There's that blank, illegible word there. Something is terribly blank with me. I can't take it, probably meaning I can't take the jump. I don't know. Rather than the modern usage, I just can't take it. So he had a bad fall. Typical of Dmitri, he's very much able to laugh at himself. A picturesque fall. Good Lord, though, 14 feet, so that's around 5 meters, maybe 4. That's quite a fall. And as I say, this is a very dangerous sport. It immediately makes me think of Anna Karenina, the steeplechase in Anna Karenina, where there was this thing called an Irish barrier, where you see, you're riding your horse, you see the barrier, you go to jump the barrier. Hidden behind the barrier, there is something like a 6-foot trench. And so you have to clear them both. And if you don't know it's there, by the time you're up in the air and the horse doesn't know it's there, it's too late to adjust to that. I don't know. I mean, that sounds insane to me. And indeed, in Anna Karenina, there's a horrible accident, and the horse ends up breaking its back and dying. The rider comes out of it all right. But that is what Dmitri was up to. He was preparing to be able to ride in steeplechases, which is something that cavalry officers did. Then he bursts in on, apparently he went unexpectedly to see Auntie Marie. Well, who is Auntie Marie? I tend to think it's Michin, Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna the Elder. In later letters, in the 1915 letters, Dmitri would call her Michin. I can't remember if he ever refers to her as Michin in any of these earlier letters, or in his earlier diary entries, she and her sons did kind of try and take him under his wing when he moved, after having been fairly isolated in Moscow, when he moved to Petersburg to go to the cavalry school. So Auntie Marie, it could be Grand Duchess Maria Georgievna, who was his biological aunt, his mother's sister. Or it could be Michin. Can't think of any other Maries, although, it's noteworthy that she is a Marie, not a Maria, that he is writing her name. With his sister, he always writes it Maria. But with this lady, it's Marie. So if any of you have any comments on that, let me know. And yeah, she had heard these criticisms of how Maria was behaving in Sweden, and how strange that she would sort of start criticizing Maria in front of Dmitri. I wouldn't have thought that if she knew him very well, she would have thought that was a good idea. So yeah, he got a little heated. He's defending his sister, quite rightly so. The only thing I've come across, I can't remember what she says in her memoirs, but the only thing I've come across talking about Maria behaving oddly in Sweden is the memoirs of Alexei Ignatiev, the general, the famous Krasny General, Red General, because he stayed on and became a Soviet general after the revolution. He was a military attaché in Sweden and talked about how people thought Maria was really kind of weird and behaving strangely. And the other thing I saw was that she was sort of standing on ceremony and insisting that people call her Imperial Highness instead of Royal Highness, and having her superior degree of royalty being acknowledged even over her husband. But then again, it was probably defensive, right? I mean, I don't know, but she must have felt just really, I don't know, not on solid ground when she moved there. And maybe it was defensive, maybe it went to her head. She and Dmitri had such a strange and tumultuous childhood. And, I don't think you can emphasize enough that she was just alone there, trying to sort of figure out what life was going to be like. Okay, so we finish up with this obviously joking, but nonetheless strange statement. Dmitri asks how his brother-in-law is, how is Vilgashka doing, and then asks about Lieutenant Rudebeck, and then says, he's not my lover anymore. Il n'est pas encore mon amant. So, I don't know what to say about that, aside from it's a joke, but where that joke came from, I don't know. Let's see, there was another instance where I stumbled over the French. So there's this sentence where the horse, he's talking about what happened in his fall, the horse, and then there's an illegible word. And then he writes in Latin letters, in French, a fui un panache, which I don't get, a plume of smoke or something like that. I don't, that is somehow descriptive of this fall. Anyway, I'm not sure what to do with that. I'm not sure what to do with, he's no longer my lover, but yeah, that's about all that can be said about this letter today. I'm really inclined, starting with the next session, since I'm here at Schatzalp, to start doing the 1939 diary entries and letters. So if you would rather stay in 1910, then do feel free to let me know. Either way, I hope to see you next time. Bye.